Select Board's public meeting on Thursday, March 21st, 2019 at 12:30 p.m. Everybody's good? Everyone can hear me? Good, thank you. We will start with announcements and open session. Bill, did you want to say something or do you want me to? Okay.
No, I think we're fine.
Okay, good. All right, so any announcements from the board?
Catherine,
This,
once in an hour.
well, this is, no, yeah, no. Any announcements or comments from the public? Okay, so we will move on to discussion of the possible purchase of map 34, lot 17 from the HYDY Hilton Trust. Decision on inserting the ballot question and possible warrant. So just to let, you do have something to say. Okay, go ahead, say it.
Oh, just to avoid the appearance of conflict of interest, my boyfriend has a grant, and I do not have a legal conflict of interest, but I would like to disclose that relationship.
Thank you. So today we are talking about placing this on the warrant primarily. There'll be brief discussion, but we're not going to go to in-depth discussion. That will be on Tuesday night at our regular select board meeting. Okay? Yes, Mr.
So
Holt.
what we need to do is, if we want to go forward with these, we need to insert the 2 ballot questions onto the article. That's the only thing that we have to accomplish today because of
that's
the
right,
time
ballot
frame for the
question.
election. So
Yeah.
the warrant question can wait until Tuesday night if you decide to, but the ballot question has to be decided today.
So ballot is for when we go, because this is a large amount of money, it will have to be voted on in the ballot come, whatever, April 30th, May 1st, something like that. So,
I do have a question.
okay, so yeah,
Dan,
we'll open it up
Dan.
to the board.
We have to have this inserted on the ballot.
Yes.
What happens on Tuesday night if we decide not to put it on the warrant?
So it would be on the ballot, but it would effectively not have.
Be dead.
It would be dead.
Yeah.
Because it has to be both places.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay. So because so many people have come to this, we will hear input from the audience. And I'll leave it at that. Any comments from the board?
Yes. So as some of you know, I did a huge amount of research on behalf of the board. And respectfully to the town administrator, the Hilton Trust, and as represented adequately, because he has been in full contact with the other 3 people in the trust, is Todd Ninford, and he is the trustee. He chose me to speak with him about it. I did not negotiate as a board, as the board, but just getting to first terms. And they need time, and their lawyer would provide very quick turnaround time for us to have a signed purchase and sale agreement before we put it on the warrant. That was one of the few things I said we had to have, so we don't go through what we went through last year with 310. And it would have contingencies. One of our contingencies is if it doesn't pass at town meeting, and if it doesn't pass at the ballot, obviously all deals are off. But I said to him, after having spoken with both the chair and the TA, that this could happen at this meeting, which is why we're having a special meeting, so this board can talk about it together for the first time. So respectfully, by all means, we should talk about this right up to the vote in town meeting and even after it. But tonight, or rather today, for the sake of getting it on the warrant, I think we should decide that today because the trustee said to me, can you get back to me on Thursday about that? And we understand things may develop after that. In other words, maybe even the price could come down. I don't know. But the point is, that's up to the people that belong to Hilton. Right now, we have a carefully considered by them firm figure We may have questions about it later, but in order for them to get the purchase and sale agreement, so we don't go through all of this and take it to town meeting and then have it dissolved, we need to commit to at least getting it on the warrant and bringing it to the people as soon as possible. And it's a fragile thing, Madam Chair, but I did talk with you and Dan, and it seemed to be possible to do it today. We can have a lot of further discussion, but I very strongly recommend getting it on the warrant today and then proceeding to talk about it later. There's a lot of information to be shared, and it's not impossible to do it, given that we have a month. This is time sensitive, and thank you for letting me say that.
So my question would be, with a purchase and sale agreement for $3.5 million being done in a week before the board can discuss it, you're saying you want to walk out of here with a purchase and sale?
I'd like to remind everybody of the language of the article, which is common.
Well, no, answer my question. Do you expect a purchase and sale agreement at the end of this meeting?
What I would like is to have the warrant article with that language put on the warrant, because remember, it said, yes, there are contingencies, but it also always says this sum or any other sum, right? So that's important, and that's a good thing to do in this kind of article. In the scope of an article, you couldn't go up to 4 million before town meeting, once we put it on, the language on the warrant, but you could go lower, right? So we all got the language of the warrant article, and I want to ask the town administrator, is that not so? That's what any other sum.
The amount can be amended at town meeting?
Right, but I would say, after, all these years, it couldn't go up, because that would be beyond the scope. It could go down. That's up to Hilltop. But I would like, given
It's
that...
up to the voters.
Well, yes, no, they could bring it down if they wanted to, the amendment could be offered. But that's the reason I would like to be able to put, so I can call back the trustee and say, okay, we got it on the warrant, now we can talk more or whatever. That's what I think, but it's up to the 5 of us. Yeah.
Any other comments? Kathleen, do you want to?
Well, I'm going to, I made a brief statement. We have 2 articles in front of us today that came in late to the game with regard to getting them on the warrant, and they're both going to be ballot questions. And they're both going to have a very significant impact on everyone that resides here in Wellfleet. So I wrote a brief statement. Nothing on the town meeting warrant is so directly linked to the town's economic vitality than these 2 articles. I do wish this warrant wasn't such a heavy financial lift. Can we do another year without a ladder truck, a front-end loader, or a street sweeper? I cannot answer that question. But the approval of these 2 articles at town meeting and ultimately in the ballot box would give some assurance to the next generation of Wellfleet residents that we cared. Thank you.
Anyone else want to say anything? Justina?
I think that Nancy Savetta's letter recommending the purchase of the property says it all. The 24 shellfish farms and Wellfleet's cultural and historical identity defined by its wild shellfishing and shellfish farming. And then she goes into the legalities of home rule that the Massachusetts laws are behind the town owning the shellfish and letting mom and pops fish it. She has some other recommendations, but she concludes with saying the town has an opportunity to ensure that small family farms will be the future of Wellfleet and that large out-of-town enterprises will not be able to monopolize Wellfleet's productive shellfish bottom. So I think our shellfish warden's memorandum of support was very eloquent and stated the issues clearly.
Yes.
For those in the audience, I didn't bring copies for everybody of the Shellfish Department's letter, but I will put it up on the town's website under 2019 annual town meeting, so anyone who doesn't have a copy and would like to see it could read it there.
So, I'll open it up to the audience, but
May I say one more thing? Yeah, first of all, through you to the town administrator, this information sheet is also already on the town, it was part of our packet, right, so that's there. And a couple of things, just for those of us on the board who haven't had a chance to read this, because for whatever reason we didn't get them yesterday, that's okay. So, I worked with Nancy Chavetta, Nancy Bale, the surveyor of the original plan for the planning board, and a number of other people. And we would be getting 2.19.53 acres. Divided, 3,400,000 divided by that number has an acre coming to us for 15,000 something. Okay, an acre. Already, some acres have been sold to two existing grant owners. Their acreages have been sold by Hilta to them. They own the bottom now, as well as forming what's on top of it. And the most recent price was 20,000 an acre. This is just some figures that the board is aware of, that you should be aware of. We would also be getting over a mile of beach that is contiguous with a public beach that is called Burton Baker Beach, that there's a public landing that you all can access legally, whether or not you use Omaha Road, right? And there's no black mayonnaise there. You know, sand can silt things up, but it's not the mud. And the other thing is that about a third of the aquaculture acreage in the town is in Hilton. You know, and that's to be considered very carefully. The rest of it is, given years, can be different. A lot of the rest of it, if not all of it at times, including the deep water, which people, you know, drag in sometimes, it's a little tight, they can do it, is wild harvest. Sometimes, according to the Shellfish Department, even up onto the beach. There can be stuff you can harvest from there. So the entire lot is useful. And that, to me, was one of the reasons it was compelling to at least bring it to town meeting and see if people wanted to buy it. We have, in the past, lost opportunities like this. I don't want to list them now for the sake of brevity. But this, to me, seems to me to be a very good idea now to at least ask people if they want to pay for it.
so we can talk more from the board. I'm going to take a big guess and say that most people here are shell fishermen and ladies, and that you are probably proponents of this. So what I would like to do is start off with who may be against it and the reason, or who may not even be against it, but what are the concerns against it? What are the things we have to look at? Because I said before, like writing a $3.5 million purchase and sale agreement is quite a big deal for our town. John, and please state your name, I'm sorry, and yes.
John Wolf, I operate a charter sailboat out of the harbor. I'm the only commercial shell fisherman to the extent of wild harvest. I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but given the fact that we are faced with having to dredge the harbor at very high expense, and the fact that if we don't do so, all of this that we're talking about with shellfish grants eventually is going to become none of the above as everything gets silted in. I'm not exactly clear on what would happen if we don't buy this. If that could be explained, if we fail to make this purchase and instead save our money to spend on the dredging issue, what would happen?
So this would be another good thing for everyone to have, but you don't have it, I'm going to guess, is a our town administrator put on the tax impact of override and debt exclusions. And yes, we have approved of putting this on, you know, firefighter, fire truck, street sweeper, front end loader, you know, et cetera, building, school and grounds. There's, they add up to kind of the typical overrides we have every year, although a lot of the DPW, street sweeper and the fire truck and front end loaders, they've been kind of pushing those off for a couple of years. Everyone can hear me, right?
Yep.
Good. So if we had everything we wanted, okay, which is what I just said, plus another piece of property, and then dredging, which is $7.5 million, which I'll explain later too, and Hill to purchase, our taxes would go up $442.72 per year. Okay, so that's, you know, you say, oh, well, that's not much, but it is, and it can be. So the tax of the Hill to purchase would be $81.62 a year added to our taxes. The dredging is the big one, which is about $205 a year. But as everybody here, I assume, knows, is that we need dredging. We could have both. We could have it all if you don't mind taxes going up. And I'm actually feeling, you know, this is a ballot question, and there's a lot of non-shellfisher people. So, I mean, there's a big, we've really got to get this understood. We've got to go through all the finances, how many people are going to benefit, how many people will purchase something, you know? So, John, go ahead.
It still doesn't answer my question as to what would happen
If we don't buy it.
shellfishing.
Well,
don't buy it.
that's kind of, that to me, yes, keep it in mind, because that to me is a big thing. So the other thing I don't like personally to do is to say, you gotta buy this, or, right, you have to do this, or somebody else, you know. So I don't know how real the fear is that a corporation, other entities from out of town will come in and buy it, and then you have to be a Wellfleet resident to have a shellfish lease, right? So if somebody else buys it, is there the fear of the prices going up, or is, I mean, you know, how much can they lease it for? So this is kind of what I want to hear. I want to hear, like, how much would how many people here, or do you know someone who would buy a grant? How much would you spend for it? Are you happy leasing it? I understand that the grants are divided up sometimes in halves or quarters, and that makes it more feasible. So those are kind of, and I wanted Nancy Chavetta to give us the numbers, and you know, this is being rushed. So I don't have all those numbers, but so let's address John's question. What would happen if the town didn't buy this?
Janet, I can answer those
Okay.
questions, because that's part of what I did in the last week.
Okay.
So, I agree with you. What I don't like is, you do this or else, right? Here are some of the case scenarios. Already, there are a number of people who have grants in the Hilton area who would like to buy them.
Do we have any more chairs in the back? Are there any stacked up over there?
Yeah.
Okay, come on in.
And one case scenario, and I do not like to be alarmist, is that anybody can own the bottom. Right now, private property owner Hilton owns the bottom. If you own the bottom, it's true what Janet said. The only people that can give licenses to farm there, right, is the Shellfish Regulatory Board. That's us, okay? But if you own the bottom, you can say to someone who's gotten that license and has their farm going on there, okay, I'm the landlord, you have to pay me rent. And the amount of the rent is to be fixed by the landlord. The other issue here is, as you know, if you're a grant holder, you have to, if you get a license from the town, have permission from the landowner if they own the bottom, and any landowner whose land you pass over, in order to be able to get that license. And one case scenario is that if there's a landlord, and it could be somebody in another country, anybody can own that bottom, they could say, like a slum landlord in a city, okay, you know, take me to court. This is my right as a property owner, and unless you pay me this.
Okay.
Yeah, and right now, I just want to say something about this. I have to think about it a lot, because if a whole lot of you, a lot of people bought what they're farming on now, the town would get taxes, because the taxes already, with those two purchases, as Nancy Vale said, are about to go up. They've been paid for years, and they're about to go up if you own something there.
Because the evaluation has gone up. The
Yeah.
appraisal has
Yeah.
just gone up.
And that is a not kind of, oh, it could happen. It has to happen under state law, okay? There's a way of assessing it. Let's not do that now, but they would go up. And I would like to protect the people with less money who are farming in that area and doing a good job. Maybe they don't have a big business. Maybe they don't have a bunch of employees. But I feel that every part of the harbor is something that should be used by people of different economic means, if they comply with the regs, and if they're good neighbors, okay? That every kind of person should have access to it. The people in the boats, the people picking in the wild, the people with less money on a grant, the people with a quarter of a grant. And like the school, which, by the way, it's a building that has to be repaired. We won't have to repair anything on this purchase. Or the fire station, which cost a lot of money, or the police station, which cost $7 million. I really believe that this is one of the things that's a commons, and that it's at the heart of the town and the well-being of the industry. And by the way, you have a grant, you have to live here. So you're here, you're spending money here, and you're part of the community. I feel that that's one of the reasons to at least ask people if they want to spend the money on the warrant. It's not, I'm not all kind of romantic about what shellfish and people
Well, I
do.
think you are.
No, I'm not. No.
Okay, thank you. Bob? And just state your full name, please.
Bob Wallace, I'm on the Finance Committee, I'm a shell fisherman. I'm not a lawyer, but it seems like if you have a purchase and sale agreement, then you're in a weaker position than not having one. You're kind of locked in. What's to say that, well, there's a purchase and sale for 3.4 or whatever, you signed it, that's non-negotiable.
Yeah.
I would suggest that all the stuff that's non-shellfishable, which is probably mean low water up to the high water mark, be surveyed and given to the Conservation Trust. And then take the other part, negotiate a price. The 3.4 given to those 4 individuals or whoever is going to be receiving the cash are going to get taxed. If they're going to end up with the same amount of money if they donate half of it, then if they pay capital gains tax, what's the difference to them? Shouldn't be any difference. But if you, half of nothing is nothing. If you go to the town and say, this is ridiculous, and it gets voted down, then it would be more prudent to take the 2 million or 1.5, take the tax deduction off your federal taxes. Just a suggestion.
So I was thinking of that. With that, so again, I'm not a shellfish person. If that's donated to Conservation Trust, can you drive on it? Do you have access?
You can make stipulations, you can say whatever
make
you want.
on the conservation thing,
Right.
you can't, okay.
You can make easements.
You can do, yeah, easements, yeah. Okay, Helen?
So that is a reasonable thought. But again, the stage we're at is for them to know that we're willing to ask the town about this. Now, purchase and sale agreement mainly protects the town, okay?
I don't see how.
Because
It doesn't
if
help.
the town, yes, because
No.
if the town doesn't pass it at town meeting in the ballot, we don't have to do it. We
But if it
can,
does, then you do. So I don't see how that protects you.
Ties your hands.
well, if the people, the voters, decide they want to spend that much money on this, I would have to bow down to it. I agree with you, Bob, it would be in their advantage, to their advantage, I think, to do exactly what you're suggesting. But whether the Conservation Trust would agree or not to have there be no driving over that land to access the shellfish grants, whether they would allow people to pick in the wild, which I think they could anyway because it's state law. Do you see what I mean? In other words, I would think that would be something that maybe could be worked out after this. But in any case, this meeting is to look at all this really carefully. I'm coming to you as someone who has sort of administratively somewhat brought it to the table. I have no horse in this race, okay? Except I'm supposed to think about not spending too much money, so that's why we're here.
So I want to know if anyone knows where 3.5 million, I guess it's down to 3.4 million, came from. I mean,
I do.
the value, I know you do, I want you to explain that, but it's kind of, yes, okay, so tell me where that number came from.
So I let Mr. Vanderbroek, who's the trustee, lay out his reasoning after having talked with the people in the trust. And what I understood, having taken notes while we had the conversation, was, so if they sold all the aquaculture leases, they would get about half of this. If they were being sold per acre for $20,000, let's say. It could be more than that, it could be less. About half of the $3,400,000, right? The rest of it is because of the things I discussed before. Over at Royal Beach, contiguous with another public beach, access to that beach through the public landing at Bertie Baker, and the fact that it's a really productive area for the wild harvesters, who make up a substantial portion of our shellfishing community. So here's the thing. He gave me that price. Apparently they had talked about higher numbers, and he gave me that price. He then looked at it again with other members. I'm looking at one of the other members to make sure that this is exactly what the experience was. But this was what I was told over the phone and took notes on. And he said, we're firm on this. And that's the point at which it had to be brought to this table, okay? I didn't say, oh, that's ridiculous, or anything like that. That is what I was told, and that's what I'm bringing to you. And I also want to remind you that what Bob suggested, and what I said earlier is perhaps they come down, given that it might not pass. It's to their advantage to have the town buy it for a lot of different reasons. And that's why we get first dibs. It could be sold to anybody, never mind. We don't know if it would.
Okay, so I'm going to interrupt you. So my question was, where did that figure come from? Is there any other comparable areas in New England that are selling their 1 acre lots for $20,000? I mean, so there's no other appraisal fees, evaluations, anything that they would base this upon?
One of the things that brought this kind of to a head is that, as many of us know, money changes hands not as an official sale of property. Money changes hands when people get the rights one way or another to use farming the land for agriculture. And this has happened for more money in other places, and since it's not confirmable by me, I'm qualifying that. But I feel that it's a fair price from everything I've
Okay,
gathered.
fine. I just want to know where it comes from.
It
I mean,
comes
who
from-
else is selling
Who
this
else?
acreage? And anywhere. Louisiana. I just want to know where, where you get the price from. So there's no clear answer. But we'll ask them as we sign a purchase and sale, if we do, where'd you get this price from? Okay, Jerry can go.
Yeah, I think Bob has excuse me, I think Bob has a good idea, but I think we're gonna need a lot of counsel from our legal counsel. What are our obligations if we sign a purchase and sale agreement? As you wanna vote, some of you may wanna vote on that today. We don't know what our obligations are from a legal standpoint of view. So we need to find that out. We don't know if the Conservation Commission would be amenable to having people drive over that, if we could work that part out. The Finance Committee hasn't met on this yet, so we don't know what their situation is going to be, or how they would look at it. I do think that we ought to protect the shell fishermen, but I think we need to have some legal counsel, which we don't have here now. And I don't want to sign a sales and purchase agreement until we get all the information from legal counsel as to what our legal standing is if we sign a purchase and sale agreement. That's not gonna happen today. And, no, it's just a minute.
Sorry, Jerry.
So I just think what Bob is saying is that I think it's a good plan, I think it's a good idea, but I think we need to protect those grants out there. But as John said, we have to look at dredging. That's an extremely important situation. We got all these other things on the thing here. And $400 and some, I don't know where that comes from. Is it on a $500,000 house? 200,000? We don't know.
It's for the tax rate of 7 point whatever we have.
It's 524, 550 per median for that.
So that's a lot of money for some people. $400 some a year. You're gonna have to sell this to a lot of people who are not in the shellfish industry, whose taxes are gonna go up pretty high. And there are a lot of people out there that are living paycheck to paycheck, as we all know. So I think, as I've just stated, and I'll say it again, that we need to find out from a legal point of view where we stand, and you can't go up tonight, Helen, and tell them that we're gonna sign a purchase and sale agreement. You said you were gonna go on the phone.
No, I did
You
not.
have said that. You say you want to purchase and sell agreement today.
No, what I said was I would get back to Ty about whether it's going on the warrant or not, and also just to relay the terms of this. Obviously, to address what you said, I completely agree with you. If we go so far as to decide to put it on the warrant, at that moment, town council has to look at this. And they also would have to get their lawyer to draw up a purchase and sale agreement that we do not have to sign.
Well, when you,
No,
when,
no, no.
when you sign a purchase and sale, you can put in contingencies.
Yes.
Like an inspection contingency with the house, so we would put in a contingency for all legal review.
Of course.
So that's one point that I have, but I don't want to interrupt you.
Okay.
No,
All right, I have a question for Dan Hort.
Okay.
Dan, can we look at purchasing the land for $3 million on the behalf of the town and then explore amortizing it over 40 years, 30 years, and assessing something like a betterment to those grant holders that's an affordable betterment like you would with water or sewer, and so they each pay something like $400 a year and take some of the burden off the town, but protect the land. There's, to me, it's real estate, so there's always creative ways of structuring it. And I think there's a win-win because we're all getting scared about the $3 million, but I'm like, all right, we're buying land, now how can we structure the deal?
So in response to that, you could structure it almost any way. If we're doing something where we're charging rent to the license holders, right now that's set at $25 per acre.
By
And
the
we would-
state.
by the
People should know
state.
it's by the state.
And we would have to petition the state to charge a different rent. A number of, I don't know how many, a couple of communities have done that where they've done it, I believe, to $200 an acre. So we could look into that, but it would be up to the state as to whether they would approve that or not.
Okay, so I want to take a question from Jan Morrissey, she still has it, and then was it Brett over here who also had a question, and then Damien?
I'm absolutely for protecting the shellfishermen, absolutely, and in theory.
Jan, I
Can
can't-
you speak up? Sure.
Sorry.
I'm absolutely in favor of protecting the shellfish community, and in theory, I'm for this, but I'm stunned at the price. That's my issue. When I went online to the assessor's database, this property, I think, is divided up into about 99 plots, and the total assessed value is less than $250,000. So I still haven't heard an answer to my question of, really, how did they get at 3.4 million? I'm really stunned at that price. And if I understood Bob Wallace correctly, not every one of those little sublots is worth $20,000. It can't be shellfish. So I have questions about the price.
1 second, who else had a question back here? Damien, is that you back there?
Yeah. I'm also a little confused on where Mass State law addresses this continuum of grants in pursuit of shellfish, in pursuit of fowl, and in pursuit of navigation. I believe that the public still has access through this lowland. I don't think that can be challenged. I think that upholds in court in any regard. So as far as having access through it, I think that's a non-issue. As far as allowing wild harvest, I think that's a non-issue, unless it becomes established through DMF as a grant, a license grant. Then my understanding is then it enters protection through DMF law. I think there's some legalities that might need to be investigated a little bit. I also agree with a lot of what's being said about a kind of inflated price. I had one more, drifting off, but I might.
Okay, think of it later. Justine had her hand up first.
Just briefly, I think many people in the room know that there's legislation in Massachusetts, a bill in front of the Massachusetts legislature to privatize grants. There's, we're a traditional shellfish community. It's not lost to anybody, the money that's involved in shellfishing. And I think as we say it's an inflated price, we also want to take into account that the price is what the market will bear, and they've already sold a couple of lots. And if there's wholesalers and shellfisher interests kind of, if there's legislation to privatize, somebody thinks the land's valuable.
I need to address what Damien said.
Yes.
Yeah, so Damien, the issue is not access for people who pick in the wild, who harvest from the wild, or drag, drag or pick, scratch. It's access for the people with the aquaculture grants. As I said earlier, you have to have it in writing if you want a license for the town to do it, that you have permission from whoever owns the property underneath your property, and who owns the area that you pass over. And to address one of the things that Jerry said was the Conservation Commission, in order for all these people to drive trucks over the resource, which is under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, they have to get a sign-off from the CONSCON. Okay? The Conservation Trust that Bob brought up is something very different. And the last thing I want to say, and you can trust it or not, I don't care. But what many of us know is that when people decide to transfer, have somebody transfer that name to their grant that they're already on, money changes hands, and it can be over $20,000 or $30,000. It can be a lot of money. And in other places, it's a lot of money. And it's hard to compare our harbor and our shell fishery to other places because every place is different. I want to say we're special and better than anybody, but I'm not going to.
No, you just did.
John had his hand up. I'll let John go.
Thank you. This is relatively new to me. I think it's probably new to a lot of people in town. And I would hope that we go through a very thorough and deliberate process before we even get to town meeting. I got a whole bunch of questions, and I'm not going to ask them here today, but I have a couple. I read in the newspaper that Nancy said there's 24 grants out there now, and as I understood it, 6 of them are being operated by 4 owners of the trust and 2 people who purchased property. Is that about correct?
Can I answer
Yeah,
that?
it is.
So
Can I answer that?
It's
John said.
So
It wasn't answered.
Yeah, it was.
Forgive me, I already said this. It isn't how many grants, because one grant holder can have multiple acres. It's how many, it's 75.38 acres is now under cultivation. This is 1/3 of the town's agriculture acreage. That's what's important, not how many grants. Grants can be all different sizes.
okay, that's good to know. But so we're looking at 18 people who are currently on the land that don't own it. Is that not correct?
Something like that.
These are actually Who said something like that?
Something like that.
5, 6, 7.
So do you know in general who maybe, anybody else, Mike might know, anybody else, Brett? So how many, that's kind of my question is, so I'm for this. I just wish it wasn't this year, you know?
Yeah.
And we'll also go into dredging, but, so how many people, okay, how many people are gonna benefit? How many, and how much, without getting personal, how much money does each grant produce that it's cost effective? That this what makes this 3.5 million cost effective by numbers? Anyone else, please?
Well, Janet, I did all the research.
Then why don't I have the numbers?
Because you didn't read your email last night, okay?
So,
But
go
let
ahead.
me-
Okay, so I want numbers.
I can give it to you right now.
Okay.
So this was the hardest thing to pin down, and the answer to that is anywhere from 0 to, I got this from so many people, including Nancy. It depends on the weather, how many people are working, how many acres are being worked, how well they're being worked, right? If there's disease that year, but a reasonable number would be, let's say, for 1 acre in a given year, depending on the oyster, market or the clam market. You can have a very well-managed acre with 2 or 3 employees, and then there's the equipment and, all the other things I just mentioned. And maybe the grant, the licensee, the person who's named on the grant, might make maybe $70,000. It could be more. There's some bigger businesses that, and I'm hoping Bob will add to this. What? A number. But the numbers are so varied, and I want to go back to what I said earlier, which is this. If somebody is a small farmer who has maybe a third of their income or a half of it and does what they do well, to my mind, their low numbers on a good year, managing everything perfectly, are to me just as important as the person who has the larger business and has more jobs that are provided.
So,
You see, so
yeah,
it's very
I know.
wild card.
Well, that's with everything in life. So,
It's
okay.
farming.
So,
What I was really
yes.
trying to find out is how many grants are on those 250 acres now. As I understand it, just from reading the newspaper article, okay, which might be wrong, not that the Cape Cod Times ever makes a mistake. But,
Did you hear that, Mary Ann?
It's 24.
we're looking at
24.
24 what?
I believe it's 24.
24
What?
There are
grant holders, and 6 of them are currently owners of the property in some form?
4 of them are, there are, to be absolutely precise and accurate,
6.
4 people are in Hilton, 2 lots have been sold, and there is 1 other at this moment, person who has 3 acres committed to them.
So there's approximately
So it's
18 people?
7. 7
Seven.
people own now,
Okay.
and one of them is about to own. And by the way,
And they're gonna own it whether we buy this or not?
That is
Because we're not
correct.
buying that stuff.
That is
So the
correct.
stuff that we're buying, how many people have a grant on it?
it's 24 minus 7.
So we're looking at 17 people that have a grant on the property, is that correct?
No,
No,
no.
24
In other words,
minus 7
A grant,
is
hold on.
17.
A grant, it's complicated because a grant can have up to 4 people named to it,
Okay,
you know? The point is, there are a lot of people farming out there, they have employees, they have families affected by it.
Helen, I got that, I'm just,
Yeah.
honestly,
So we
I'm just
need
trying to understand.
numbers. We
It's
need-
not-
yeah.
If this goes to an entity, there's gonna be employees, I'm trying to understand how many people have some sort of ownership in a grant. Is it 17, is it 34, is it 12,
20.
that's a number that I think would be very important to everyone.
Are you talking about ownership of the property under the grant?
No, I'm talking about ownership.
Licenses.
License on the grant.
24.
24 minus 7.
No, 24.
7 of those are owners.
Okay, so the ones that are on the 219 acres that we're gonna buy,
Yes.
because we're not buying the ones that are owned by 7 people, we're looking at 12.5 people, rounded off roughly right, that have
So if I can
Well,
answer that from what I'm understanding
Mike, do you have
here.
the answer, or do you have?
Well, I just want to make a point that the answer is, you're correct, that there's
I'm
sites
correct. I
around
don't even know what I'm
17,
talking about.
around 17 licensed sites that contain multiple acres, and those acres are worked by various amounts of people, so it really depends on the farm, how many people.
Right.
But if you're talking about the economic impact,
No, I'm talking about not the employees, but the
Right.
people that have an ownership stake in the license.
so the only one that would be able to give you that
It doesn't have to be.
exact number.
I just wanna-
So it could be up to 4 people per license holder. So, there's 24 licenses, but those licenses can be split into 4 owners, basically. So, I mean, I don't know the exact number,
But
but you
Nancy
can,
Chevetta could get us that exact.
Yeah, I
number?
yeah,
kinda
you can
wanted
get
it
that
to-
exact.
Because if we're gonna invest $3.5 million in something like this, I think that number would be very important to understand.
So again,
And-
this is being rushed in many ways. Nancy, Johnny, and Chris could not be here today because there's like a shellfish, a mass shellfish meeting somewhere, so, Mike.
I just want to finish the
Yeah.
point too, is that it's not just the licensed site holders who are economically impacted. I mean, this is a third of the acreage in the town currently leased, and we know that it's well over 10% of the town is economically impacted by the industry. Probably a far larger number than that when you count families and employees and residents and restaurants that are all, and even wholesale businesses that are all impacted by this industry. And it's pretty rare to be able to, for a municipality to be able to reclaim land that was once public land that has been privatized, and the opportunities to make purchases of this size land. This is an access issue too, that at any point, any owner of this property could prohibit people from even walking on that beach unless they're fishing or fouling. Like access issues, that like once things go from the public to the private sphere, you really rarely ever get them back. And so there is a price to be put on the value per acre of the grants, but that's not the only thing at issue here. It's also a mile of beach that really private ownership could say you do not have access to, period. I think obviously I'm impacted. I just want to state that I am impacted in this. And I can't speak for what the town should pay or whatever, but the only point I have to make is that a lot of people's livelihoods, not just the small number of license holders, a lot of people are impacted by the economy of what's going on in just that area, a third of the leases.
I understand
Yeah.
that, however, I think
I'm just making a separate point as to what you're
it's
saying.
very difficult to predict the future. We all understand
Right.
that, okay? I think there's gonna be a shellfish industry in Wellfleet for a long time to come.
Sure.
And the town and I support something like that. I think it's really, the fine point here is ownership. Are we gonna continue to have small business people, small owners, individual families in Wellfleet have access to owner grants? Or would they be forced to work for an entity that might buy the 219 acres? And I don't know if an entity is out there looking at doing something like that. And where they would be employees. I think that's the gist of the concern that we have here. So I'm not philosophically against this. I'm shocked by the price.
Yeah, I think.
My understanding was that this was originally bought 20 years ago for somewhere in the area of $20,000 or $30,000. I don't know if that's correct, but that's something I would like to know. When I look at the assessed value, I get some very specific concerns about that. I would also like to know, if I can just go one more time here, and I'll let you go. 2 people or 3 people have decided to purchase it. My understanding is those grants have been for sale for a long time, why didn't anyone else decide to buy?
Right, I mean, that's another question too. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just, yesterday I was at a Mass Aquaculture Association meeting, my very first one.
Is that the MSI?
No, it's the MAA.
MA, okay.
But
Okay.
what I took from it is, there's some big farms out there. And they want to tell us, like, you don't have to worry, you're going to keep home rule. We can change the word entity. And they was trying to soothe us. I went there with my brother. And, which is all good, but what's to keep, say, Island Creek Seafood from purchasing all this land and then have 20 of their people just move to Wellfleet?
Take over.
Because there's no housing.
No, but I'm saying
I'm
they
kidding.
could. This is,
Yeah.
like, they would invest in places for those people to live, to own those properties.
Or hire locals.
Or hire locals. But, again, like, I'm a wild fisherman for 40 years. I've been fishing in the wild. My name's on a grant, but my wife works the grant. I hate going to the grant, to be honest with you. But, yeah, I mean, the wild fishery's getting squeezed. There's less wild fishermen. Like, I'm a dying breed of person. Believe me, and I've seen it happening. And the only people that are wild fishermen, a lot of times, are guys my age that have done it their whole life. So, and not only that, I'll say one more thing. There's people coming from the West Coast who want property over here. They want to work the grants here, because out there they're having big problems.
So let me just take a really casual survey. If you're a property owner, do you mind your taxes going up for this? I mean, I'll raise my hand. I don't mind my taxes going up. What?
Au contraire.
I'm just
Yeah,
curious
what's
to
the
know.
wording? You asked if we mind.
Which, what?
You asked if we mind if our taxes go up if you're a property owner, and then you raised your hand. So I don't know if you intended to. That
Got it
wording.
backwards.
You gotta read into it what I did. I don't know.
Okay. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I don't mention any number. I'm just saying, this is what it comes down to, right? It really comes down to not just the people here. I mean, we're gonna get more information. I see people shaking their head. We have to get more information. As I said before, this is like really rushed, and we have to negotiate, and we have to have our lawyers look at it. You need to go too and talk about money. But it really comes down to not only the people in this room saying, yes, we want this and the importance of it, but what's going to happen at the ballot box? Like, you know, who's going to vote yes, who's going to say, no, I don't want to spend money. So that's really what to me, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I'm
Brad.
Brad Morse.
Brad, yeah.
Thank you all for caring about the shellfishermen and doing a great job. Quickly, I'll just say, I just wanted to answer this gentleman's question, you know, why haven't other people bought out there? And it's a really good question. At the heart of it is, those grants, they're only worth what they are with the town license on them, for one, okay?
That's true. Okay.
Because you could drive a boat out there and shellfish, you know, if you couldn't drive your truck, which would be horrible for me personally, because I have a grant out there. But the other point I just wanted to make is that initially it was just a few grants in front that got into this lawsuit that formed Hilda Trust, and everybody else was just trespassing. So that's why they didn't get involved in the initial litigation, because it was just an access thing for the other ones. For the ones that it really mattered for, it was a bigger deal, and I'm not discounting anything that got done there. But I just caution the town that who's going to come in and tell people that have been using these grants for 40 years that they got to leave? Like that, if it's private property, I know how it works on land, and if this is private property, it's going to work the same way. So I would say buyer beware to anybody that would come in and purchase these lots out there. Mm-hmm. Like, who's going to want to come in and tell Joe Sixpack that's been there for 40 years he has to leave? Like,
I want to be there when that happens.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, so you're saying that if the town bought it, that wouldn't happen, but if a private.
The town is the only person that can really do this, I think, because everybody else is going to be like, oh my God, what a can of worms. But that's just how I look at it. But
Have you ever gotten an eviction letter?
Well, that's what I mean. That's what you're looking at, like, you
They
know.
get enforced.
Well, maybe, but you might have, oh, I'm just saying, there might be some legal recourse for the tenant that's been there a long time.
That's a good, yeah, I know, so that's a very good point. I hadn't thought that far ahead of
Plus,
that.
the town has been charging me rent on it. Like, it's kind of weird.
Sort of, it's licensing
The
fee.
state too.
Okay. Wait, the town doesn't charge you rent, it charges you the annual
License
licensing
fee.
fee. Yeah, okay, but, so that's, I want to
I
clarify.
get that, too.
So let me think who I want to go next. I want Fred to go next, because he's our finance committee guy.
But I'm not speaking for the finance committee, right? But I do have a question. I got here about 10 minutes late, so maybe this was addressed, but I haven't heard it since. People have been talking about how rushed we are and how high the price is. What I'm not clear about is, are we in fact in negotiation with the trust or are we not? And it's kind of a question. It's like, is there a timestamp on this that if we don't give, well, let me ask a question. If we don't give them an answer by such and such a date, then they're throwing it open to the world to buy? My guess is if they were selling it off piecemeal, there's a real advantage to selling the parcel by itself in one large thing. There's a lot less in legal costs, a lot less in marketing, a lot less in negotiation. So are we in fact negotiating with them? I've heard variations of we could set aside some for the conservation trust, negotiate for the rest. I'm going to assume that this is a good purchase for the town for all the reasons that people have articulated. The only question I have really is, are we negotiating, or is this, you know, like you're saying, do we have to have a purchase and sale by tonight? Or do we go to our legal department, do we go to our shell fishermen and come up with a coherent response to $3.4 million and say, look, here's our response, and now we're in negotiation, and this could take months, or a week, or however long it takes. Where are we?
So Helen can answer that, but I don't necessarily agree with her, and I don't know who else agrees with her. But I agree, we have to have, this is, and even Tuesday night, I'll just throw it out there to anybody who's in the audience, write a letter. You don't even have to have an intro paragraph, you know, just write a letter, say, this is what I think, and send it to us, so we really have, and, you know, your different thoughts on rent, lease, who's gonna come in, kick you off. So this is something that would be really great to have all that information. So this, to me, this is more info gathering, and, yeah, we do, there's been an agreement to negotiate or get back to the owners, but there's a lot more, there's a lot to this.
So I just say, in just follow up, I don't know, just from hearing the discussion, I don't know if we're negotiating from a position of strength or weakness. I haven't been able to glean that, A. And B, I looked up the acronym because I wasn't familiar with,
Right.
it's apparently, how do you like them apples?
Yes.
So we got it.
Just say, I mean, you know, we need, yeah, there's a little attitude.
No, excuse me, that was, Mayor, can I answer this question?
Answer it succinctly whether we're in negotiation or not. Because we're not, the board is not at
Wait,
this point.
after this meeting, we can negotiate some things. What both parties needed a clear commitment on, I think, is whether or not it should go on the warrant. At that point, we spend money on council, and they spend money asking their council to draw up a purchase and sale agreement. The one thing that I said, and this was after a conversation with the town administrator and the chair.
And the what? Oh, the
You.
chair.
Yeah.
They
that
said
would
the
be you.
chair, okay.
Yeah, is we didn't want to get in a situation where we went so far as to look into it, right? And to get it on the warrant without having a clear commitment from them. And Todd Mindebro said, the trustee said at that point, a purchase and sale agreement. I said that would be good, and there could be contingencies, and you can work out details given the nature of the purchase and sale agreement. In other words, one of the things, it could be 3 $1,400,000 or any other sum less than that, you see, to get it on the warrant. And what they wanted was to know this week so that they could get the purchase and sale agreement, the paperwork done. Okay, that's that. Can I just say one more thing? Which is, I would say, I think we would be contemplating very seriously if we were just offered the beach for half that sum, buying that much beach for, 1.5 million, something like that. The town would be looking at that very seriously. That's my thought about the price.
Damien had his hand up first and back.
Just along Helen's line of thinking exactly, I would encourage finding a method to bring to the voters where we could vote on a lesser number.
Kathleen?
Thank you for recognizing me, Madam Chair. My arm was getting tired.
Well, we like to put it up quick.
Through you to the audience, the question before the Board of Selectmen this afternoon is whether or not we insert this article as a ballot question. There's still a lot of discussion on this. I think Jerry Houck has brought up a very valid point of getting legal counsel to look at this. And I think you've all brought up a very valid point about, how do you like them apples, $3.5 million? We really need to think about this price. Because this tax, this is for the rest of your lives, and it's not going to stop here, There'll be something next year. $425 per resident in Wellfleet's, not in my mind, chump change. And I'm one of the poor folk. And I don't pay taxes because I can't afford to buy anything here. I'm in a one-room studio. Get that? So the question I'd like to ask all of you today is, do you support inserting this as a ballot question or as an article on the town warrant? If you do, please raise your hand.
Insert it.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm finished.
Work out the legal part afterwards.
And the financial.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It seems to me that there are two big issues, ownership and then how it will be paid for. They're sort of separate. I don't think they should necessarily be joined together for the warrant article. I'm especially intrigued by what Justina brought up, which, if I understood it correctly, is more in the way of user fees. So you're not saying to people in the town in general, you are going to be responsible for someone else being able to earn a living, blah, 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 blah. They may accept more of the financial burden to securing their base on the grant. But there would be a place that was owned by the town of Wellfleet and not some entity, quote unquote. That's the other side that's important. So I wouldn't scare off people from the notion of the town owning the land by giving a price tag immediately when there may be other ways of financing it.
Okay. Mr. Wallace?
The acreage starts at the mean high water. That beach has been eroding to the point where at high water there is no beach. So that's a given. There's a beach at low tide. Okay, you want to go down there and sunbathe and not swim. So there's a lot of room for negotiation as far as what is it worth. It's still eroding. Some of it's accreting at the end of Field Point, but all the stuff that's facing Jeremy's is eroding. And they also stipulate that they want no more grants issued after the town buys it. So what you see is what you get. So as far as future whatever, this is what I understand from Helen speaking with her the other day. So I wouldn't put a figure on any purchase and sale agreement. You can say,
So is that true that they're stipulating that there can't be any more grants?
And it's a double, it's where you flip it over and see the other side. So
Okay,
a lot
just
of it
say
is
yes or no. Are there no more
Let me
grants
finish.
allowed? Just answer the question.
I'm going to answer the question. Most of it is productive area that could never have a grant.
Okay.
I said
Good.
that at the beginning. So I would almost have stipulated that, brought it up as something for the town to consider putting in a purchase and sale agreement, you see? In other words, you've got a lot of grants out there. You don't want too high density, okay? You don't.
Okay, so that
So
goes
the answer is
into
yes. That was brought up as possible in the purchase and sale agreement, but the fact is that a lot of that, most of it, depending on the year, is productive for the wild fishery, so you couldn't have a grant anyway, okay?
Okay. Is that Chad in back? How you doing?
So I
Could you stand up, please?
as I pointed out before, I think that it's pretty important to talk to town council sooner than later. And I would say the next step for the board or for the administrator should be to talk to town council about this because of the nature of this. It's a very nebulous situation, all of it. It has been for a long time since Hilta purchased it from the previous owner. The deed that Hilta has is kind of fuzzy. The previous owner, Cape Shore Properties, deed was kind of fuzzy also. Can you subdivide this type of thing? I think that's a fuzzy question that they have, but I'm not sure is that actually legal. And as far as the subdivision itself, when you go out, I know I've looked at the plan, and so Hilta claims to own, either to mean low water or the 1,600 feet. That's the extent. That's what's in their deed. And a lot of these areas, and I've seen the plan where it's actually been divided on the map. And knowing the area intimately, a lot of those areas that are being claimed as owned by Hilta because of the 1,600 feet boundaries are actually, that boundary is beyond mean low. And so I think if there's parcels in their map, in the subdivision map, that are possibly outside of their ownership because of the way that ownership was created. And I think that while I'm very supportive of this, 3.4 million is a lot of money. I think that, if that was the only price, then the town should do it no matter what. But I think in talking to Hilta about this, in negotiating the price, all of this needs to be considered. And all of those, we're not going to buy something from them as a town if it's not something that Hilta actually owns or has a right to in the first place. And as far as, I think the other main, really big question is, does it actually create an ownership stake? Like, what is the town actually buying here? And then I worry about, the speed in which this, I know this is all being rushed, that's not ideal, but I think that also, I saw what happened, with the property on Kendrick, and like this kind of a thing where, yeah, everyone's known that you could potentially buy your grant from Hilta out there for a long time. It's just kind of turned a corner where now people are realizing it more and more, and everyone's worried about the speed of this happening now. And now the actors who are sitting outside thinking, oh, look at Wellfleet Harbor, like, I'd really love to get my hands on that, kind of going simultaneously with stuff in the State House that would actually allow them, if it went through, with the privatization bill, allow them to come into the harbor and have outside ownership stake. All of this is happening right now, so, and now it's like public information that we're talking about this today. So it would be nice, I think, if the town could have some type of assurance from Hilta that they're only negotiating with us for a while at least, build in some type of time. I don't know if they're going to want money for it or some sort of option. Only talk with the town for a set period of time, because I'm worried about someone coming in from outside and cutting a big freaking check and dropping it on my desk for $5 million, and then it's negotiation over, and that's a big messy situation. So that's it.
Okay, I want to hear from Berto.
I just have a question. So you threw out a number of $400 and some odd that people's tax bill would go up?
No, this is, this has been, so this is for everything on the warrant.
So, but you mentioned a number. Your taxes are going to go up by what?
$442 for the entire warrant articles that need appropriation. Hilta would be $81.62.
Okay. So what is that based on? Because my taxes are one thing, but someone who lives in a $2 million house is another thing.
Okay,
so what is that
I am not sure. It's on the tax rate.
It's a median single-family home.
Median
which
single
is
family.
about 525, 535, somewhere in that.
So some people's are going to go up that much, and some people's aren't, and some people's are going to go up more, right?
Yes.
Well, I would not throw that number around too much.
Okay.
Unless people really, really understand what that is.
It's misleading.
It's misleading.
Can I please add the other figure? So If the health purchase was for this huge amount of money, actually, the number on here is higher. For some reason, on here is $3,500,000. Here's what everybody needs to know. It would be less than that, obviously, because it isn't $3,500,000. Per effect on tax rate, 0.152 cents per dollar, right? That's what the,
15.2 cents.
yes, per
Yes.
dollar. Is that per dollar?
The tax rate would go up 15.2 cents. So it is currently 773, I believe. It
Yes.
was just based on this year's tax rate,
Yeah.
it would go up to 788.2.
So if your property was assessed for 200,000 as opposed to the median income thing, which is 500 whatever, it would be less than that. The point is,
So let's not throw out that number that's misleading.
thank you.
So we're gonna wrap it up, and remember that this is just to place this on the ballot. I know, I'm gonna let go. This is just to place it on the ballot. Yeah.
I'm in support of purchasing it, but I'm also concerned about how that subdivision got approved and how it got recorded with the Registry of Deeds, because that's where we really made the problem here. And how do we protect ourselves in the future so upland landowners don't start selling off the lower rights?
Now, this is tricky. Okay, so, so again, you're welcome to come Tuesday night and talk about this some more, but I could take, I'll have a vote from our board to place this on the warrant, and it's gotta be on the warrant too, because we haven't placed it on the warrant, and the ballot.
Yes. I move that we place article, where is it?
No, nothing.
There is no article number
Yeah.
because it's not on the warrant.
Do we have a title for it? Sorry, guys, lots of papers.
Proposed warrant article is purchase of parcel 17 on map.
I move that we place the article titled Purchase of Parcel 17 on map 34 of the Wellfleet Town Assessor's map on the warrant for the 2019 annual town meeting warrant, and that we also do, what would a ballot question?
You
Place
should do
it on
that
the ballot.
separately, the ballot
Okay.
question.
Okay, so that's the first motion.
What's the first motion to put it on the warrant?
Yes, please.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Madam Chair?
Yes, where are you?
Sorry, I would just ask that the board understand that they're doing that with recognition that there's a scrivener's error within the article. If you see after the section that says Chapter 59, the letters
Yep.
OR,
Yep.
those will not appear.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And that will
There's
be,
amendments, so
that'll be,
I-
for the- it doesn't need to be amended if you recognize it as a scrivener's error, and that will also be in the next article.
Thank you.
Okay. So do we recognize that? Everyone's got that
Yeah.
correction?
We have a second.
So this is just putting this on the warrant. All in favor? So, 2/3 vote required. Maybe four.
Well, you should still take those of us who are opposed, putting it on the warrant.
I'm not opposed, I was.
We're going to do all of them.
Yeah, okay.
So this is just the
Opposed.
warrant question, which I believe is just a majority.
Oh, all right, just placing it.
The
You're
ballot
right, you're right.
question has to be a majority vote of 2/3, which means 4 people have to vote in favor.
Okay. So how many opposed?
I'm opposed.
How many abstaining? So we have one abstention,
Can
one
I give my
opposed.
reasons for it?
If you would like.
I'm opposed because I want to wait till we go to the meeting Tuesday night, when I thought we were going to take the vote, then to put it on the warrant. I understand the ballot question. I'm for the ballot question, but I still want to hear, hopefully, from town council before we go to the meeting on Tuesday night. There's so many questions to be asked and to be answered that I don't want to stick something on the warrant where questions haven't been answered.
Right, I think we do have, yes, I agree.
Well, Madam Chair, it does say on the agenda, not article discussion, but ballot question.
Kathleen's absolutely right.
It says discussion of possible purchase.
Decision on inserting ballot, yeah.
And possible warrant article. But Jerry, I agree with you, on this way,
We're all
can
in
get
agreement
all
with
that. by
Yeah.
Tuesday from town council, and we can
But
see.
you just voted to put it on the warrant.
We
Yes.
put it on the warrant, we can always withdraw it, we can always, you know, if we find out something or whatever happens, it can be
I just
withdrawn.
think it's a frivolous.
Okay, that's fine, that's the way you
Not on
want.
my part.
So may I have a motion to put this on the ballot? Should we wait until Tuesday? No, we have to do it
No, it
today.
has to be today.
So may I have a motion to put this on the ballot?
Is somebody else going to do this? Yeah, okay. Joe, you'll tell me if I'm doing this right. I move oh yes, we did get language. No, we didn't get language. Dan?
I'm hoping that you say you move to insert the purchase of parcel 17 on map 34 into the 2019 election warrant.
Ballot.
Ballot.
Yeah.
I move that we say so moved. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Powers?
Sorry, the administrator is correct. You're actually setting the election warrant.
Oh,
Your
warrant.
town clerk sets the ballot.
Oh.
So you are handling your warrant.
Okay, can I have the language again?
Move to insert the purchase of parcel 17 on map 34 into the 2019 election warrant.
As printed in your packet.
As printed in the packet.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, 4, and are you abstaining or
I am
opposed?
abstaining.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So again, please, any factual comment that you want us to understand for Tuesday night, email, what is it, just Board of Selectmen, Town of Wellfleet?
BOS.
BOS?
Yep.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Morrissey.
The statement that you just put into the town election, does that include a price?
Nothing, no, we're just, well, it does on this article, but it can be amended.
It does not. I can read to you what the question will say, but the reason that the price is not in there is because the price could be amended at town meeting. So it's unfortunate, but it could be, and that's kind of the way, the drawback of having less than 35 days between your election and town meeting.
As long as
Is we won't know the price until then, but we will have to do a good job of informing everybody what the price is once it's set by town meeting.
Thank you.
So the wording is to vote to appropriate the sum of $3,400,000 or any other sum. He's not even listening. Okay.
Just to follow up, the reason why the number is not in the ballot question is this is done in accordance with the Mass Department of Revenue, and they have strict requirements on that. So the ballot question is as general as it's been stated, because the warrant article has all the specifics.
Okay. All good?
Onward.
You got all that information? Talking to the reporters. I'm sorry, Ed, did you have a question before we move on? You had
I
a
did.
question?
Yes. You want me to ask it?
Sure.
Okay, so as I understand it, one of the main reasons for doing this has to do with access for shellfishing, both aquaculture and wild harvest.
That's one of the reasons.
That's one of the reasons, right?
No.
So, my question is, could the owners of this land, if they wanted to, if the town doesn't buy it and they decide to sell it to someone else, could they put a restriction on that sale that would require the granting of access for shellfishing of various kinds on that property in perpetuity?
I would think so.
And since that is a possibility, and I believe at least one of the members of the trust, Mr. McClellan, is here right now, would you be willing to ask the representatives of the trust if they would consider making such stipulation on such a sale?
I won't ask this here because we're not prepared to ask it.
May I correct
Yes.
an error? It's only the access to the aquaculture leases that could be restricted. People can fish and fowl on there, okay?
So what you told me on the phone yesterday is wrong.
Actually, that is exactly what I told you. I was very careful about it and very sure, and if you didn't understand everything I said, I understand that, because when I was trying to learn about all of this in the early 2000s, I had a hard time understanding it myself, okay?
May I just speak about the process that we'll have going forward?
Yes.
So the process going forward here is, 2 weeks ago, I don't think I knew anything about this. So this has all come up in the last 2 weeks.
A week ago.
Yeah.
A week ago.
So we have now inserted the article into the election ballot. We're set there, that would provide us with funding. We'll go to town meeting with an article that will provide us with the permission to do so. I have not seen anything regarding a purchase and sale agreement at this time, so I don't have anything that has gone to town council yet. The only thing that has gone to town council so far is the warrant article and the ballot question, to make sure that we've got those correct. So we have not made an agreement yet, and the select board has not signed any purchase and sale agreement. When the purchase and sale agreement was first brought up, the concept behind it was, we don't want to happen what happened with 3 Kendrick Avenue, in that if the town starts talking about purchasing this, somebody else sweeps in and writes a big check and takes the property from out underneath the town. So we wanted to say, if we're going to make a commitment to you, we want a commitment from you to us. That this is, we're talking only to each other. Somebody else. That's why we've got to get that purchase and sale agreement with many contingencies in it. But that's why we want the purchase and sale agreement in place, to make sure that that conversation is only between us and the trust. That's really what we're trying to achieve right now.
On to dredging? On to dredging. Everybody here for dredging?
Stay if you're in, stay if you don't.
Yeah, stay. And again, please write a letter, email.
Thank you.
Hey, Rob?
Just, I think that's keeping it in town. I still think
This is what I do, I want to purchase and this is what we're agreeing, and then you can also, okay, so we gotta move on.
Hey guys, shut up please.
No, please, don't say shut up, that's terrible.
Yes, I apologize for my
Okay, so we're gonna talk about dredging now. So the same thing is, this is because we just found out about dredging, getting money from the federal government a week ago Wednesday. Is it just a week ago? No, it'll be 2 weeks. It was just a week ago Wednesday. So again, we're pressed for time because we have to get this on the ballot and we have to get this as a warrant article. So again, it's a little bit rushed, but we will go into better detail. So this is the first time this board has talked about Hilta and about dredging, all right? That's why if it seems a little bit discombobulated, it's because we're pulling it all together today. So as many of you know, a week ago, Wednesday, we have word from the Army Corps of Engineering that the federal government has said they would give us $5 million for the federal channel. So this is me practicing what I have to say. Chad, can I talk to you for a second and whisper something in your ear?
Sure.
This is an aside. It's business though, but I just want to whisper, I just don't want to get distracted.
Wait, nothing?
Well, I've known Chad since he was 2.
I guess with me too.
Or 1
I
even.
can't say that.
All right, good.
Hold on. Are you able to do it?
That's what I was gonna say. Okay, we're not gonna look yet, we're gonna just write down your email. Okay, so there's 3 sections of dredging, all right? One is the federal channel that comes in from, closer than Jeremy Point and comes into beyond the breakwater. That's the federal channel. The federal government is responsible for the money and for dredging. That's the Army Corps of Engineering. They're the engineering branch of our federal government. The middle part of the channel is the state's responsibility. The state owns the middle of, from the breakwater close into the ramps, but not the ramps, right? The mooring field. All right, that we have already talked about with the state. State people changed though, but the state is required, this was a 2-year ago estimate on costs. So fees have already gone up since 2 years, but 2 years ago it was after the Bourne Engineering, now GEI, said that it would cost about $10 million to dredge the state part of the state channel. That's what we're here today. That's the $5 million, because the state has said, we're not going to give you the whole thing. You're going to have to come through with 50%. They originally, I think, said 25. They would do 25%. We'd be responsible for 75%. So then the inner channel, the inner harbor, and Chipman's Cove is our responsibility, and that's $5 million. But we're not even talking about that. Is it $5 million or $10 million? It's $5 million. It was estimated at $5 million. But we're not even going to talk about that now because we're talking about federal and then state. So at the dredging task force meeting on Monday, nobody, again, this is the first time we've been talking about this since the federal government said we could give you, we will, they say we will give you $5 million. So we're asking for $7.5 million. $5 million of that is to be ready to go when the state is ready to go. So everybody here knows that there's a very short window on when you can dredge, September to December, and that depends upon the weather, the waves, the temperatures. So I think Mike Flanagan said you could deduct 40 days on average of that window because there's usually wind or cold. So while we're talking about, while the federal channel should be done, they do not even start discussing it until their fiscal year. They're going to, all get together and talk about all the other Army Corps of Engineering plans and decisions they have to make or jobs they have to do. And they're not even going to start that until October or September.
October of 2019.
Yeah, so they'll start talking about the projects. Now we have a very wonderful man up in Lincoln at the Army Corps Division in Massachusetts who's well aware, and we have the permits and everything ready to go. Maybe they've already said, aha, Wellfleet's ready, let's start October 2nd. Maybe. Everybody else doubts what I say, but I say we're ready. So earliest we could do it would be October. Who knows though? We won't find out until October.
2020.
No, I'm saying we could possibly, little slight, I'm the only person saying 2019. But anyhow, if it doesn't start 2019, it won't be able to start until 2020 in the fall, okay? So that's why we're asking for the $7.5 million, because that $5 million will be our half of the state. Because if the Army Corps gets it ready in 2019 or 2020, we then want to have the money in place and show the state that we are committed to having the money. The state demands, if you want money from them, you have to show that the town also supports it with their half. And then the other part of the $2.5 million is showing that we also have money for maintenance. People don't like to give money to somebody who's not going to maintain it. And then there's been other talk, I think I can say this here because it's against just people sitting around the table wanting this going, so that if the state got the harbor, their part of the harbor dredged, And it was a beautiful sunny fall, global warming comes in, and we have this great weather in Wellfleet. And we say to the dredging committee, off the record, right? We have this dredging committee, this dredging company that says, you know, we've got an extra 10 days and we've got the equipment. Can we say, well, we have an extra $1 million. How would you like to come in and do the Inner Harbor? That's why it's $7.5 million. And we do not spend it until we need it. It's for appropriations of up to that sum. So but we have to be ready. We have to have the money. We can't wait even for a fall town meeting. We've really got to have it there. But not a dime is going to be spent until we start on the state. Maybe a couple dimes. I don't know. That's maybe if the federal government, who gives us up to $5 million, those are costs from 2 years ago. So we're being ready, but nothing is going to be spent until it's needed. And Mr. Hort, would you like to add anything to that?
So one of the things that I would say is in the research that we've done in talking to dredging companies, they're booked like 3 years out. So we need to commit now and get them scheduled. You know, the earliest we think, except for Janet, has a different time frame. But the rest of us think the earliest they would be here is the fall of 2021, which is only 2.5 years away. And so if
but
they're
that's
booked,
for the state. That's the state.
But if they're booked 3 years out,
that's right.
we wouldn't even be able to get them. So we need to start working on this as soon as possible. So we need to be able to start to find a contractor who can come and do the dredging for us on our schedule when we need them. The other part about getting this commitment of the money is the state has basically indicated to us that we could most likely expect a 50% match from the state. So if we can say to the state, we've already got 7.5 committed from the town, we need you to commit your part now. We can now go to the state and say the town has made the commitment to dredging. We've got this money set aside. Now, Representative Peake, Senator Sear, Governor Baker, we need you to step up and make the commitment to Wellfleet as well. So it's all happening very quickly after happening very slowly for years. But this is us being able to start to schedule for the local portion of the dredging and get it when we need them in our window, and it's also to be able to go to the state and ask them for matching funds.
John?
If we actually put a shovel in the ground in 2021, when will we borrow the money? When will we start paying the bonds back, and when will the taxes start?
So it could be 2020 that the federal government starts doing the federal channel. Okay?
So if I can answer his question. So if we did it in the fall of 2021, so we're expending the money in the fall of 2021. We would most likely borrow, that would be fiscal year 22. We would most likely borrow around May or June of 2022. So the first time you're going to see your taxes go up is that first year when we're making full payments, which would be your October bill of 2022 is the first time you would see the taxes go up from dredging.
Is this roughly still the same dredging plan that was being considered, say like last year, with barging materials into Cape Cod Bay, disposal there?
Yes.
And has there been any success in looking at purchasing our own dredging equipment? And
So, yes, so that's the other reason we want that extra money. It would be really nice if the people who dredge for the state had their equipment there and had the time and they could do it. But if they got finished, let's say the state comes in October and they're done the end of October, middle November because the weather's great, we could then, so Dennis Murphy is looking into and has priced out costs of buying our own dredge. Also of renting it, and also of renting it.
We've looked at having our own dredge, either buying it or renting it. the county has also made a little bit of rumblings about that they might be willing to buy a dredge that would work in Wellfleet Harbor and a few other harbors on Cape Cod, knowing that the typical suction dredge won't work in Wellfleet, but there are a number of other ones on Cape Cod that the same holds true. So the county, I just talked to the county administrator last Thursday, and he gave me some kind of indications that the county might be willing to look at purchasing a dredge that would help Wellfleet and other harbors similar to ours.
John?
John Wolf. I'm actually on the Marine Advisory Committee, but I'm not speaking as a member. I neither asked for authorization to do so or been given it. But it came into some information which may be bad or may be good. You're in a better position to tell me if either way. That there was an offer made to purchase some used suction dredging equipment for Wellfleet of a rather small scale nature, which would have been ideal for maintenance dredging, and possibly for way inside, such as in the slips. And the main person offering to do this was Mark Blatch, and had offered to allow the spoils to be pumped to his property, I guess probably to help shore up his place.
I don't know anything about that.
But apparently it was brought before the board on the October 23rd meeting, according to the minutes.
No, that was something else.
That was not, yeah, I'd have to look at the minutes, I don't know, no.
Tom Flynn wanted to do a presentation, that's what the notation was.
No. I'm just trying to remember October. We may have talked about,
I remember.
we may have talked about dredging on our own, but it had nothing to do with a private person saying they'll give us the money for it. Helen, yes, you may.
Two issues. One is the idea of people contributing to our having our own dredging came up at one meeting. At another meeting, there is an issue of the Conservation Commission having denied an application for rigid, armoring in front of the Black
For
Sheds.
what?
Rigid armoring.
All right, okay.
And we discussed writing a letter of support for the, as abutters to their property for the Conservation Commission's DEP file. The other thing is, not to do it now, but there are a lot of pros and cons for the town owning that kind of equipment. If the county owned it, that would be ideal. Because number one, if it breaks, we have to fix it. Look at all the vehicles on here on this warrant. And you can't, I'm looking at the TA helplessly, hoping he has a vocabulary for what I'm about to say. No, I know you are. Which is, when you have people do a big job, they have to bond that they're going to do it right. We can't do that on ourselves.
Kathleen?
Janet, also, as I understand it, John, we can't use a suction dredge for environmental reasons. Wellfleet's always going to be looking at a mechanical dredge. And in our particular case, the mechanical dredge has to have X amount of hydraulic output to do the job down there. From the research that the Dredging Task Committee has already performed, there isn't one for sale, there isn't one available, there isn't one to rent. The Eastern Seaboard is a mecca for anybody that's got a mechanical dredge right now. They're just not that plentiful. So while it might be in the best interest of the town at some future point in time to own a dredge, we'd be putting our name on a wait list right now, so.
Supposedly these people had found one for sale used.
Well, they didn't come to the dredging committee.
Oh, okay.
I've
Stand
been
corrected.
on the dredging committee, Dan's been on, yeah. I've heard rumors of that, but I have not, I've never seen or heard anything. And as a matter of fact, the first rumor I heard was like a couple days ago about a private entity doing that. Maybe they weren't, serious. You can't, the dredging material is not always suitable to put on a beach.
Especially in Wellfleet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
They-
supposedly they're gonna use it as fill, but I have a hard time imagining.
I don't
that
know.
stuff being used.
Okay, Damien, you had a question?
I'm just curious if the appropriation of the money, as will be printed on the warrant, could be changed in its usage as long as it was still applied towards dredging.
Yes, yeah. And no time limit on it, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Good. So, yeah, I'm like, yeah. Gotta vote for it, guys. Don't have a lot of choice here.
Your life may depend on it.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
Especially if you fell overboard.
Good to see you, Damien. Yeah. Okay.
Want a motion?
Yeah, I do want a motion.
I move
Any
to,
questions? No, yeah, you got it, okay. Go ahead.
let somebody else do it.
Oh, no, sorry, I just,
I move the proposed warrant article with Wellfleet Harbor dredging, just read the whole thing, to see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $7.5 million or any other sum for the purpose of paying all costs related to preventative maintenance dredging and for the payment of all other costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the town treasurer, with the approval of the selectmen, be and hereby is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to MGL C44 little squiggly thing 71, or pursuant to any other
Don't put them.
enabling
You don't have
authority
to
and
read it.
to
Yeah, the rest is
and
just
some more
legal
stuff.
borrowing.
Second,
all in favor? Great,
I'll just have a comment.
okay.
I spoke to Mike Flanagan a couple of weeks ago, and he told me that he was talking to some people from a dredging company, and they said that they could come in and dredge the whole system. They would bring their own equipment in, dredge the whole system, our part of the system, for around $2 million.
Yes, he's on,
And-
yeah.
That might be something that needs to be looked at. That way we didn't have to buy a dredge.
Yeah,
We
that
don't
would.
need the $7.5 million.
Well, you do need the $7.5 million.
Not if they come in and do the dredging.
So Mike was at the meeting.
We had a dredging meeting on Monday and Mike didn't say any of
He
this,
didn't
so.
say anything.
No, and he might have found out that it didn't work, or he may be referring to the same thing, that after the state does the middle of it, the 2 million might be for our area. I think
That's what I'm
yeah,
saying.
just for our area.
Just our area,
Yeah.
yeah.
But that too is 3 years, and that's if they're available. So we had the, everybody
There's a motion and a
voted.
second, we didn't have a vote yet.
All in favor? Yeah, actually, we did have
Oh,
vote.
okay.
We did it quietly.
That's a second.
And then we have to place this on the ballot, right?
Yes.
So may I have a motion to place this on the ballot?
I so move. Second.
All in favor? Great, unanimous decision. We love dredging.
Janet, could I just say something? This has nothing to do with anything that you got to add on.
Can we adjourn? Or do, okay, go ahead.
No, just
Okay,
briefly.
be quiet because Fred's talking.
Last year, when we did the first version of the FinCom strategic plan, I talked to Mike Flanagan at some length about the dredging of the harbor and asked about that $15 million, $5 million for the outer harbor, the rest for the inner harbor, and splitting the, and I asked him where that number came from, and he said it had been provided by consultants.
Yeah, board consultant.
I'm not sure if due diligence has been done to actually validate what the real number is.
Well, it hasn't, because that was a 2-year-old, if you heard that, so it's a 2-year-old cost.
So the $7.5 million is a nice holding place,
Yeah.
but.
It may go up, it may go
And
down.
if the state doesn't give 50%, you might find that
Right.
you're in a different situation.
Well, the previous person who we worked with said 50%, but he went on to private enterprise.
Just saying.
I know,
mean,
I know.
These numbers are fungible.
So yeah, I know, good.
May I just say one thing?
Move to adjourn?
No, I'll say that too. I want to
Oh, we
thank No, we didn't even vote on it.
Yeah.
I want to thank Dan and Jen for this really clear description of the whole thing. I knew some of it, I didn't know all of it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I move that we adjourn. Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Good job.